Pat Winslow has had several, I've totally cocked this up. Okay, Pat Winslow has had several poetry collections published. Most recently, Kissing Bones, Unpredictable Geometry, and Dreaming of Walls, Repeating Themselves, all with Templar poetry. Her short fiction has appeared in anthologies and magazines, and she is currently exploring the possibility of writing a libretto for an opera. This is the third place story in the Tarmac competition. It's called Pig, and it's going to be read to you by Pat Winslow.
Hello everybody. Hello everybody.
Hello.
Really quiet, aren't they? Right, this is the pig. Let's see if I can read it here. Yes. The pig was dead. How it got there we never found out. It was lying on its side on the front doorstep like a slab of concrete. If you kicked it, its flesh didn't wobble. It's rigor mortis, I told my mother. Rigor nothing, she said, the pig's got to go. But we couldn't shift it. We asked our neighbour to help. He couldn't shift it either. He phoned his son and told him to come from work. He's got a pickup truck with a winch, he said. We attached the pig to it. The winch broke. The pig stayed there all day. It started to rain. You could see it reflected in the puddle. Now we've got two pigs, I thought. My mother made scrambled eggs on toast. We hadn't eaten all day, we were ravenous. A policeman came. That's three now. I didn't say anything. What's this, he said. What does it look like, I said. It's a pig. Are you trying to be funny, he said. No, I said. We just found it. Somebody put it there this morning. Who, said the policeman. If I knew, I'd ask them, I'd take it away, I said. The policeman drove off. That night, the rain got heavier. The pig was starting to look different. It looked sort of floppy. I touched its ear with my foot and it moved. Definitely floppy. It was starting to decompose. That's the next stage, I told my mother. We can chop it up now and put it in the bin, get rid of it that way. But we didn't, because it was still raining and the street light wasn't working properly, so we wouldn't have been able to see what we were doing anyway. We'll leave it till tomorrow, I said. The next morning, there was a man from the council and two policemen came this time. Have you noticed they're not sending any women here, I said to my mother. She was too busy making tea to notice. She was laying out biscuits in a fan shape on the plate. We've got plenty more, she said as she handed them around. The policemen took two each. When they thought I wasn't looking, they took another two more. The man from the council took one. He was thin and whispery, and he spoke with an accent. Where are you from? My mother asked him. He just looked at her and said nothing. There was a crumb on his tie. I wanted to brush it off. I couldn't stop looking at it. This pig, he said at last. You know it's a health hazard. We've had complaints, said one of the policemen. I have to ask you to move it. Or get a licence, said the other one. You need a licence to have a pig. It's dead, I said. More tea, said my mother. They held out their cups. Is this the hacksaw you propose to use? The council official said when we told him our plan. It is. You've tried cutting up a pig before? Never. Then I don't think it's going to work, he replied. And, said the policeman, who knew all about pigs, the bin isn't a good idea. And I could see his point. The pig was crawling with blowflies. They were laying eggs everywhere. We'll send someone round, said the whispery man from the council. Someone with a truck and a winch. Before it went dark, a man with a notebook came to inspect the site. He took a tape measure out of his pocket and he began sizing up the place outside our front door. For the truck, he said. He ate 2 lemon puffs and a French fancy, and my mother sent me out at lunchtime to replenish the stocks. Men get hungry, she said. The truck arrived at 7:30 the next morning. Oh, that's early, my mother said. They must be keen. She went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. The milkman came and went, and the truck backed in slowly and swung out again, and backed in and swung out, and backed in and swung out. He's having trouble parking, said my mother. Have you noticed how it's men they keep sending? After the 13th attempt, the driver thumped the steering wheel and yanked on the handbrake. Don't any of you lot go out to ruddy work, he yelled out of the window. His face was all purple and puffy. What do you mean, my mother said, bristling. He pointed to the parked cars in our street, which wasn't strictly fair. It was on account of the pig that the neighbour's son's truck was still there with its broken winch, and I was planning to get my car off the blocks as soon as I could get new wheels and an exhaust for it. But in fact, I'd actually been going to do that the day the pig arrived. The driver sloped off to get some change so he could use the phone box down the bottom of our road. His mobile had run out of juice, and we wouldn't let him use ours. I can't believe he's just left his truck here, my mother said, at an angle. How was anyone supposed to get up here and up and down our road now, supposing there's a fire? Which there had to be, of course. It was only a minor fire, but you know what the fire brigade's like. They have to investigate everything and make sure it's safe. It was only toast, and Mrs. Haslam had put it out before they came. She'd even made another batch. But she was eating it when they turned into the road, but the fire engine had to mount the pavement on the opposite side to go past, and they hit the truck's wing mirror and tore it straight off. When the driver came back from the phone box, he went ballistic. I'll have to get back to the depot now, he said. And he turned to me and jabbed a finger in my chest. Why didn't you tell me there was no phone in the bloody box? How was I to know, I said, I never use it. When he'd gone, my mother gave the fire brigade some tea. We're running out, she whispered to me. You'll have to go and buy some more. PG Tips are doing all right out of this pig, I thought. The policeman, who knew all about pigs, came back that evening to see how we were doing. We had the local newspaper there as well, taking pictures and asking questions. How long before the maggots hatch? Asked the journalist. He was a friendly-looking chap. Why? I asked. My brother goes fishing. Oh, there's carp in the canal, said the policeman, who knew all about pigs. It seemed there wasn't an animal he didn't know about, because the conversation then turned to sea bass and Portuguese man-o'-wars. What's one of those, my mother asked. Jellyfish, he said. Deadly. I know a man who had to have a leg amputated because of one. Oh, at least we don't have one of those on our doorstep. The next day was Sunday, and no self-respecting council worker works on a Sunday, so the pig stayed where it was. I was getting rather fond of it. There's a lot to watch in a decomposing pig. If the weather's right, the maggots hatch on the 4th day, which they did. So I phoned the journalist and his brother came down straight away, but he was picky though. Oh, they're not mature, he said. Another few days and they'll be nice and plump. I'll come back then, if the pig's not gone, of course. The pig wasn't gone. There was a strike. By the end of the week, there were bin liners down our road, as well as parked cars and a broken truck, and the journalist came back. Have you got rats yet? I didn't like to ask what his brother wanted those for. My mother made him a cup of tea and gave him a jam donut. He held the donut up and he grinned at her. They call these Berliners in Germany. When John F. Kennedy said, Ich bin ein Berliner, he was really saying, I'm a jam donut. Oh, I liked him, said my mother. They shouldn't have shot him. The Germans, I said. For some reason, the journalist thought this was very funny. After a while, the pig began looking like a giant bruised thumb. It was all swollen and black. The kids loved it. I had to stand guard over it so that they didn't start poking and prodding it. A good thing we didn't put it in the bin, said my mother, as she tied up another plastic bag and hurled it into the street. The day the strike ended, the pig changed colour again. It was a sort of creamy colour now and wrinkled. It was caving in. My mother said it reminded her of her grandmother, And I said, I didn't think that was really a very nice thing to say. And no, she said, but it's true. The bin men were beeping and backing down the street with their lights flashing. There were two blokes walking down the other side of the road with rubber gloves, slinging people's bin bags into the back. My mother gave them the thumbs up sign. They'd got their pay increase. It's still not enough, I said. I wouldn't do that job. We watched them working their way down the road, and when they drove back up again, she asked them if they wanted a cup of tea. Can't stop, the bloke on our side said. We said we'd get this backlog cleared by Wednesday. I see you've still got that pig. Yes, she said. We were famous. We'd been in all the papers, and Look North had come to do an interview. I saw you on the telly, the bin man said. I know her, I said to my wife. I empty her bin. He walked over to the pig and he touched it with the end of his boot. It looks like my granddad. I could weep. It's where we all end up, isn't it? Makes you think. He looked at me. Let me know if you want any help shifting it. That afternoon, we phoned the council. Any longer and you won't be able to pick it up with a winch, I told them. It'll start fermenting and it'll go all mouldy and it'll be like beer with fluff and bits of bone in it. The hair was actually already falling off and the ears had gone completely dry. There was a distinctly cheesy smell starting to come from it. It was worse than feet. Even the kids stayed away. They sent a forklift truck driver round. If they'd sent you in the first place, we'd have been back to normal, my mother said. She was wrong. He took one look at the pig and he fell down in a dead faint. Wheat tea, that's what he wants, I said. My mother pushed me out of the way. Give him a chair, she said, and a glass of cold water. Now, if you've ever tried getting a chair and a glass of water past a pig on a doorstep, you'll know how difficult it is. It didn't help that my laces were undone. I fell. My knees went into the pig's stomach cavity and the chair splintered underneath me and the water went everywhere, but miraculously the glass didn't smash. Well, that's one thing, said my mother. The man with the forklift fainted again when I stood up and he saw my jeans. My mother called the council and said he wasn't fit. Let me speak to him, the council said. And there must have been a difference of opinion because in the end his boss came round in a flash white car and told him to go home. He didn't even give him a lift. He just drove off and left him there sitting on the pavement drinking water. Well, eventually the bloke got in the forklift and he drove off. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of this pig, my mother said. It wasn't so bad once the flies had gone and the cheesy smell had stopped being cheesy. There were lots of interesting beetles now and wasps and wispy grey fuzz. When it's bones, we can throw it away like we were going to, I said. Once or twice we had art students coming to take photos of it. There was one with long hair who had a sketchbook. On the last day she turned up with a folding chair and a box of paints and an easel. And when she'd finished her painting, she wrote, "Death is beautiful" underneath it. She had funny green eyes with pupils that were the size of full stops. And when she looked at me, they made me feel small and important at the same time. You make me feel like a microbe, I told her. She smelled like wet earth. I wanted to be near her and away from her. My mother could see what was happening from the window, and it wasn't a tea and biscuit situation, she would tell me later. The student asked me to bag up the bones for her. I took a shovel from our shed at the back and found a piece of hardboard to scoop them onto. "Do you want me to wash them?" I asked her. "That would be nice," she said. My mother disappeared behind the curtains. "Would bleach be a good idea?" That would make sense. I asked Mrs. Haslam if I could borrow her old galvanised iron tub. When I told her what it was for, she said we could keep it. It took quite a bit of time. We had to be careful. The art student helped me scrub the doorstep after we'd bagged everything up. It was the least she could do, she said. I watched her hair in the evening sun. It was swinging in swags. Nothing will ever be the same after this, I thought. She looked up at me suddenly. You'll miss that pig, won't you? Only a bit, I said. It's like I grew up with it. Which was a funny thing to say, because I was 29.